What advice would you give your 24-year-old self?
There is no timeline. There's no prescribed timeline to get anywhere, and you can take however long you want, and you don't have to work yourself half to death to try to achieve something on some self-imposed timeline. Just slow down and enjoy it.
Welcome to Scare Confident. I'm your host, Tiffany Souter. This week, we talk with Jackie Hermes. She is certainly someone that has a lot of ands in her life. She's a wife. She's a mom to 3 kids. 2 of them are adopted. She is a founder and a CEO of an agency. She's a top voice on LinkedIn and a speaker and a podcast host. I mean, wild. It was an excellent conversation. I think my biggest takeaway from this was that we all have this moment in our lives where our doing, our loving, our creating, our giving starts to move from being the gift we're giving to the world to some level of toxicity that is no longer serving us. And we have to find the rest pause button. And I loved how Jackie talked about how she started her journey of saying, look, I've got to stop walking around like an empty bucket, so tired, so grumpy, so not in my best self to be able to serve the people and the things around me. That was one of my biggest reminders and takeaways from this conversation. Listen in. I'm so glad to meet you. I feel like I know you a little online, and then I think Bob Ruffalo told me or something. He's like, you've got to meet her. You guys need to connect. So thanks for making the time. Okay, I want to start with a question. Maybe you've had it before, but just sort of like, instead of it being biographical of like, blah, 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 blah. When you were a little girl laying in bed at night, what did you dream of?
Ooh, I don't know. I've always had really wild dreams that were like not really about a future or anything. They were like about travel and weird animals and being surrounded by all these different people. And I still have those dreams, just very, very vivid. I don't know.
Really?
Like a big imagination, just I can cook up like 100 different ideas of all the different things that I want to do. And I'm totally still like that. Like I feel like I have 10 careers and 5 different lives ahead of me.
So do you think that spirit of like that adventurer and like wanderer is like being played out in your life today, just in a different narrative? Like there's not fanciful animals, but like there is wildlife in the life of an entrepreneur.
I'm totally like that though. Like I've always had pets and I always have traveled a lot and had lots of different business ideas. And yes, I mean, as an entrepreneur, it's like that every day is a weird adventure and you kind of never know what's going to happen. And I feel like that's why I'm able to have such a good attitude about everything every day. Cause I'm just like, like what's going to happen today, and everything that happens, you have to laugh about it. Nothing's perfect and nothing ever goes how you think it's going to go. And I almost just stopped even coming up with what I expect to happen. And I'm just like, all right, well, let's see how it's going to go. When I go to therapy and talk to my therapist about my habit of predicting and like me looking into the future and scenario planning to try to figure out what to expect and prepare myself for different situations. That's one thing that I've been working on, is like letting go of my need to know what's going to happen and just like stepping into whatever will be. And I think that's a big thing that you have to do as an entrepreneur. I'm talking about therapy first 3 minutes. Here we go.
I love it. Was risk modeled for you when you were growing up? Like, did you see this life that you live in?
Yes and no. My parents had lots of different interests. Like my dad was involved in tons of different organizations. He was traveling all over the place and he was super overcommitted. It looked cool to me at the time. And now as I get older and talk to him about it, I realize how hard that probably must have been for him. So yeah, I would say it was modeled for me in some way, not the same way as it's playing out for me, but yeah, in some way.
When I was like reading through some of your LinkedIn posts, I saw this theme of like learning to rest. I'm like wondering if that's a journey that you've been on, like figuring out, I have got to learn how to rest. And I have got to be okay with naming stress. And I have got to be okay with maybe things not being okay. So I don't know, but I'm sort of like themes that I'm pulling out of as you're saying, like, this is the stuff life has taught me, that there's some things in those buckets. True?
Yeah, it's everything that I write on LinkedIn is really like the message that I need
Uh-huh.
for myself. And I'm writing it because I need to hear it. And everyone's like, oh, wow, like so much wisdom. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm telling myself this today because I need to reiterate that I need to be okay sitting down and resting and doing these things. Like 5 years ago, I couldn't sit down and sit still. And I was just like beating myself up all the time and feeling guilty and whatnot. And it's funny, my husband's totally like that. Like I was out of town last weekend and he did all these chores that I was supposed to do. And I was like, thank you so much. It's so nice that you did that. And he was like, well, it was just because I can't sit still. And I was like, well, you could have taken the credit, one. But two, dude, you gotta figure out how to sit down and sit still, because now that I've figured out a little bit more how to rest and how to take care of myself and just like how to get enough sleep, man, I have such a better attitude. I feel better every single day. I'm nicer to my kids. I'm nicer to myself. I'm a better leader. We do an NPS survey every year internally. So the team gets to talk about how much they like showing up at work, how much they would recommend people they know to come and work at the company. And the scores this year were the highest they've ever been. We didn't have anyone score us under an 8 for the first time ever. And I was like, dang, this is really cool. And I think it reflects in the fact that like we're preaching to the leaders and getting everyone on board with like taking care of themselves and making sure that like, because that all starts from the top. I'm rereading Fierce Conversations, and I just got to the part where they're talking about how the fish rots from the head. And like when you are rotting from the head, you're not taking care of yourself and you're showing up poorly. That is the message that goes to everyone, that you should be overworking yourself and you should be, who cares if you don't sleep? Sleep when you're dead. Everything's about work.
What got your attention to say, like, past behaviors, past habits, like Jackie's maxed out self does not serve like where I'm going? This is not going to work. Or was it another leader you saw? Was it something that broke? Like, what got your attention?
Just like feeling like shit, honestly. I don't know if I should be swearing. Feeling
Yeah.
bad. Breaking down. I don't know if you have been there, but like seeing the signs multiple times that like I was nearing that breaking point and then not being able to stop before I got there, which is very frustrating. And just like getting to that point where I feel so bad that I can't stop myself from like sliding down that hill and feeling terrible and like not being able to get out of bed or like getting really sick. So I was like, dude, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. So getting to that realization and like figuring out, I feel like once you get to that point where you can see the signs coming and you're overworking yourself and you're going to get to that breaking point and you can't figure out how to stop it, we should be able to stop it when we can see the signs.
I think that's very overwhelming for people because there's a change process that has to be ingested, that
Yeah.
people feel like I don't have time to change because I don't have time for anything. So, like, how did you start that process?
I feel like it's all in little tiny everyday things. And I think that's where a lot of people make mistakes. I've done that 100 times, right? It's like when you want to get in shape and you're like, I'm going on a diet, I'm joining a gym, I'm doing 2 hours of HIIT every day, and I'm going to start on like this big grand plan.
Totally.
And then in a week, you're like, well, that didn't work. And you're back where you were at. I started wearing this thing, the Whoop, in 2020. And it just like noticing, right? Noticing things like, oh, I'm not putting myself in bed for enough time. Noticing things like alcohol's really freaking bad for me. And when I have certain amounts of alcohol or certain times, or when I eat at certain times, I sleep really poorly, right? And noticing things that are changing the way that I feel. And when you notice them over time, you can make small changes. I've been wearing this thing for almost 4 years, like a long process of just making really teeny tiny changes. It doesn't have to be like a big change.
So the other thing I observe is like when you're an entrepreneur, a couple of your kids are adopted, you grew up in a household where like your dad was probably serving a lot of different communities and boards and things like that. Like we are servers. We are people
Yeah.
who give their time to other people. We build things so that other people have places and homes and feel close, which can create a world where your own needs and wants and like what you want out of life and how you feel sometimes is irrelevant when you say yes to really big, hard things. But
Yeah.
that can also be like a bad habit. At some point, you had to be like, I have to be a customer of my own time. I have to be a customer of my own life. I have to, like you said, like we can't rot from the head. That we kind of talked about the outside game of like having a whoop strap and going to bed earlier. Those are like physical things you're doing, but there's kind of this like underlying belief probably that maybe also had to pivot. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Like the belief that like you're worth spending time to make yourself feel good, or like tell me more about.
Yeah. And just like if you're going to go to bed 2 hours earlier, you're not doing something else. And so what is that? Maybe it was watching TV, but my like hunch is it was like serving something that you cared about or, feeding into your company or mentoring young women or, you know what I mean? Like something has to give. You can't just say it's not an eternally additive game. And maybe the question is, was it a process to begin to give yourself permission to say no to external things so that you could say yes to like internal things?
I think you have to look at why you're doing those external things. I think that COVID really changed a lot of the way I was operating in my life. Like I was traveling every 2 or 3 weeks pre-COVID. I was at events 2, 3, 4 nights a week. I was gone all the time. I was getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym every single morning. I was not getting enough sleep and making all of these decisions that I think fed my ego. They felt really good. They were helping grow the business. I looked good. I was in the gym constantly. It was a lot of things that I think looked really good from the outside. And when I took a step back, and I was like, I mean, we were forced, right, to sit in our houses. And I was forced to look at everything I was doing and be like, who is this serving, really? Doing a lot of the events and stuff, I definitely was serving other people. Like I was running Women's Entrepreneurship Week. And I mean, we produced 60 events in a week to serve women entrepreneurs in Milwaukee. It was freaking insane.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
we did it and we did it multiple years in a row. And I got to help that live on by transitioning that to another group of women and serving on the board. Like I got to be part of the founding group. And like it's kind of like I busted my butt. I put in so much time and I'm really proud of what I did. And I don't have to like do all of the physical labor to be of value. I think like my love language is acts of service. And sometimes I think that I have to be like of physical service to people all the time to be of value. And I have to like unlearn that, right? Like anytime a friend is going through something hard, I'm like, what can I do for you? And I'm like, a friend was just at a hospital locally with her daughter for like 5 days in like a really scary situation. And I'm like, what do you need? Do you need me to go to your house an hour away and get you clothes? And it's like, do I really have time for that? I don't. But that's how I feel like I am of value. And I do think that you have to retrain your brain out of that and know that you can be of value in other ways. So, yeah, I think I was like shocked out of it, and you have to learn other ways to contribute.
We talked before I pushed record here about the transition recently in your business of you putting a president in place, and you're the founder, right?
Yeah.
So walk me through that choice and decision. I like can feel it in my gut of like, okay, we're going to do this. What was that process look like? I think you had somebody internally step into the role. Is that right? So yeah, what informed that? Kind of the stage in your life, stage of the business?
Well, she's been with me since almost the beginning. So she was one of the very first employees, and she has been at the business for almost 9 of 11 now years, which made, I think, the decision pretty easy. She's also been asking to be a shareholder for many years. So I think the time was right. And I also really had a lot of opportunity to develop her over the years and challenge her in developing herself and becoming like a better coach, a better leader. I think we really developed each other over the
Mhm.
last 5 years to become better leaders in general. And so it felt like the right time. I don't know. I operate on gut feeling a lot. And as we were approaching kind of a decade in business and we changed how our management was structured a little bit over the last year. And I thought it was perfect timing to bring her in at the turn of the year. And honestly, there couldn't be anyone more deserving than her of something like that. And we trust each other implicitly
Yeah.
because we've been together for so long.
Mhm.
It's almost like we share a brain, and that makes it easy too.
Mhm. Mhm. So will it change your role in the business, or it's like kind of formalizing the way she was already functioning?
A little bit of both. So, I mean, she had been in a head of operations role, a head of people role. She's done a lot of those things already, but I have backed out of some of the like operational decision making. And she is doing a lot more holding me accountable in how I'm running the business, which is cool. It's something that I need, you know? I've had a business coach for a long time who just tells me exactly how it is. And I need to be challenged and I need to be held accountable. And it's nice to have more sources that will do that because it's hard to find that accountability when you're running a company as the solo founder because there's not a lot of people that even have enough information to hold you
Mhm.
accountable.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I'm excited for you in that. Very similar actually to my journey. The guy who runs the business had been moved to me for a decade, and so there is a sense of somebody's character, like the underside of their hands. I feel like I know he could be in a room of a million people and I would like be able to see his walk. Like that's
Yep.
I just know this human being.
Yep.
And yeah, and when you're gonna trust them, I shifted the leadership team to report to him. And that was a big deal because as a founder, a lot of them came to work for you. Like, the business, they're like, it'll work or it won't. We'll see. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
there's risk in small business. What kind of be along for the ride, but they're really saying yes to Jackie. And so that can be startling and hard on a culture. And so I'm glad that that's been a good move for everybody.
Yeah, it has. I'm really excited to see what happens in the future too. It's been really, really positive so far. And it's so nice to have just that partner and sharing like
Mhm.
every little detail of the business. And
Mhm.
like I said, that accountability is fantastic. As we review financials and she's poking into every little corner, I'm like, oh, I'm a creative.
Yeah.
Like, I hardly, I don't even want to look at that stuff. So please take it over.
Great.
This is amazing. Love it.
That's great. Can we spend a little time digging into your journey and becoming like a working mom? That transition. Your kids are all teenagers now, but did you grow up with a working mom? Did she stay at home? What did that kind of look like? And then kind of what that journey's been like for you?
My mom was a young mom. So she had me when she was 23, and she's always been a hairstylist, but she kind of like worked part time to. I remember she worked in our basement for a while and would like take clients in the basement, which I'm pretty sure was illegal. And then I think someone
Every
like,
small town had one of those. Mine did.
mm hmm, mm hmm. I'm pretty sure someone like called her in because then she had to go into a salon because we'd be like playing in the other room while she was like doing people's hair in the
Mhm.
basement. And my dad was always like, he was an air traffic controller. He was the head of the air traffic controllers union nationally. He was like a local politician and he was involved in like a bazillion things
Mm,
and he traveled a lot and whatnot. So she really did like the lion's
mhm,
share of the work at home.
mhm,
And she was really involved a lot locally too with like different local organizations. So
mhm,
I think they both like showed what it was like to like serve the community and serve
mhm,
other people. And I did get to see like even with her being at home, it kind of looked like a job to me
mhm.
at a young age, which I think was an interesting
Yeah.
interesting view.
Like, what do you remember seeing that made you think that?
I think it was because she was working in the house
Mm-hmm.
and balancing everything, like it was a different, I don't think it was common to see parents
No,
working in the house at that time,
no.
So she was working in the house, and then in between her actual work in the house, then she was doing her other work in the house,
Mm-hmm.
so then she's doing laundry and the cooking and the organizing the kids, and then she's doing her other work. So it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of how we work today,
Mm-hmm.
like what my kids see me doing, but I had, I guess, the privilege of seeing her do it. So it kind of all looked like a job, I guess.
Yeah, it's really interesting for sure.
Yeah.
So you have two adopted and one bio kids. So what were the ages that kids came into your life for you?
So I was 24 when I had my son. So
Okay.
also fairly young.
Uh-huh.
And he's now 13. And then my daughter, who is 17, my ex husband and I adopted together when she was 9.
Okay.
My daughter, who is 13, my current husband, new husband, he and his ex wife adopted as a baby.
Whoa.
It's a crazy Brady bunch. And
Yes.
I have also 2 former foster daughters, one of which is still relatively involved in our life. And I talked to her mom, and we have all these like extended family members from biological families and from like step families. And I swear the family is so big. It's so interesting just because we've built our family in such an unconventional way. It's like, I don't know. You hear my son talk and he's like, I've never gotten a brother. I have so many sisters. He has like 2 stepsisters. He has all these foster sisters. It's like the definition of family is so different in
Uh-huh.
ours.
Uh-huh. That's sweet. So how old were your kids when you started your business then? I mean, it's all hard, but I found the early years to be especially hard, taxing from a time perspective.
So Ari was 2, I want to say. So he was little. And then we started fostering shortly after the time that I started the business, too. Perfect time to do it.
Oh my word. Yeah. Oh, there's never a good time for it. Busy people are the ones who run the world, right?
I know. I know. We went to New York for like part of a summer, and we were like working half days, and we like found a nanny to come for half days for Ari. And then we were like exploring the city for half days and staying in Brooklyn. It was super fun. And of course, like when you're not living your normal life is the time to make big life decisions. And we were like, we should sign up to be foster parents. So we like filled out the applications and everything when we were there. And then when we got back to like normal life, we were like, what in the world did we do? Like, this
Mhm.
is a lot. And yeah, I mean, I'm really, really glad that we did it. And my ex husband's family, they started bringing in like babies from the hospital, and they fostered babies from the time that they were born until they were adopted.
Oh my
And then
word.
I have a number of people in my family who are adopted, including cousins that were adopted from Russia. So we both had adoption in our
In your
lives.
heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so special. That is wild. When your kids were growing up, did you guys do daycare, nannies? What was kind of your childcare solve? A mother-in-law who lived in or something?
So his mom took care of the kids 1 day a week. My mom took care of the kids 1 day a
Mhm.
week. And so having kids young, we stuck around our families, which I'm very grateful that we did. And then I actually negotiated a 4-day work week very early on at my corporate job because I started the business on the side. So I would work 4 10-hour days, and then I would stay home with my son on Fridays. And that is when during his like nap times is actually when I was like trying to start the business.
You are like full time hustle. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
I was always up to something. I
Yeah.
swear. My family was like, "You're doing what?" I remember sitting my dad down and be like, "I'm starting a company at like some Chinese restaurant." And he was like, "What? You're doing what?" Oh, okay. He doesn't even bat an eye whenever I tell
Yeah.
him what I'm up to. He's like, "All right."
Try the things. So does your
Yep.
husband now have a similar risk profile to you? Is he just like, let's just watch the circus run or
Oh yeah. Well, my ex-husband is the one who got me into all of this stuff in the first place because he was always listening to entrepreneurship books, and he was like, I think I want to start a company. And I was like, you're nuts. And he convinced me to do all this stuff. So he also had a similar like love for entrepreneurship
Uh-huh.
and whatnot. And then my husband, Ryan, he's a CFO, like he's a finance guy,
Okay.
and he was not entrepreneurial, or
Mhm.
maybe he didn't know it yet when I met him, and he quit his job and started consulting in 2021 and now consults full time.
So
So
that's awesome. So you guys have some level of flexibility for both of you as
we
the
do.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Which
Hmm.
is pretty cool.
That's very cool. Very cool. So what I talk about living a life of and not feeling like life has oars, but like, how do I figure out how to get to the next level of complexity? How do I figure out how to make saying yes to fostering kids be right in our lives and not give up
Yeah.
more than I need to? So what's the like next that you want to add? And it can be 10 years from now, I don't know, but what do you want to add yet to your life, Jackie?
Ooh. Well, I have another company idea. We'll see. We'll see on that one. I'm really, really excited about the next stage of this one. So, and dedicated to this one.
Mhm.
So that's a maybe. I have 5 years until all the kids are in college. So that one, we already have plans for what we're going to do. Probably, I would love to travel somewhere every 3 to 4 months and have different places that we're staying and kind of seeing the world. I think that's one thing that I started with having kids younger in my
Mhm.
life. I didn't do as much traveling as I wanted. So there's just so much that I want to see. So,
How does it feel to like, because I still have a 3-year-old. So my kids are so far apart. I'm going to be raising kids till I'm 84 years old. I'm going to be driving to the elementary school, like actually like 17 years. It's just insane. But when you say we're 5 years away from all of our kids being through college, how does that like feel as a mom? I'm sort of like looking into my future self, and
mhm.
you're younger than I am, but you know what I mean? Like, what does it feel like? What's it feel like to say that and to see the kids at this age and to feel your family in this stage? How does it feel?
It's kind of weird. Like I have a 17-year-old that is preparing to go to college next year, and I never thought that I would be at this point at this age.
Mhm.
And I mean, frankly, 15 years ago, I didn't even know if I was going to have kids. Like, I was not even sure that that was in my future. And so, fast forward, a lot of my friends are like having babies right now.
Mhm.
Right. And so, it's exactly what we were talking about at the beginning. It is not what I planned. And if I looked into my future long ago, it's not what I would have predicted for myself, but it's cool, right?
Mhm.
And I'm excited for it. And we have really good relationships with our kids. I think they're all going to be back to travel with us and to visit us and all of that good stuff. I think, yeah, they're pretty open with us. And we always ask them, like, are you going to come back and go on vacation with us? And they're like, yeah, whenever we're not going to be able to afford to go on vacation. Of course, we're going to be back. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, cool. Well, I'm glad that's the reason.
Totally. My parents were very young when they had me too, like 22, 23. And the cool
Yeah.
thing is they're very young grandparents.
Yep.
That's the harder part about having kids older is like, yeah, you did a lot of cool things when you were young, but I need to like legit live to be like 110 to see some things, you know? So it's
You
like,
know,
it's a different, and like you say, there's no right or wrong way. It's all
yeah.
wonderful and fun and hilarious, but
I look at all my friends that are having babies now, though, and I'm like, man, you are so emotionally stable for your children to grow up with. Like, if my children had their like early childhood right now, I was absolutely not this stable in my
Mhm.
earlier mid 20s. So I think it's a different
Yeah.
experience.
Oh, I had one. Our kids are really far, but my first one I had in our 20s, and our last I had at 40. And I say, I mean, it is wildly different. I was at a track meet
Yep.
last night, and we know this family that has 8 kids, and their youngest is 15. He was like a free range chicken. I mean, I don't know that he'd been home in 2 days, you know. And I was like, because you just care about very different things
Oh,
as your
yeah.
older parent.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
from my oldest to youngest, the oldest is always, she's always like, oh, Like, I would have been grounded for that. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry. You're the guinea pig and you got the hardest rules. And also you broke a lot of rules. Like you could have maybe
Maybe you
broken
needed it.
fewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you an oldest, Jackie, or what's your birth order? Yeah, oldest.
Oldest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would have guessed. Yeah.
Yep. Wait, why?
Well, I mean, they're just usually very achiever oriented and like confident and take charge. And like, you're not like looking around asking for permission to go do the things. You're just like, I'm just gonna go.
Yep.
And
Always have been like
people can
that.
come or not come, whichever they'd like to do.
Not even looking behind me like, oh, see ya.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay, one other question, and then we can give people a chance to kind of know where to find you. But what advice would you give your 24-year-old self? We were just kind of talking about this a little bit, I guess, but what advice would you give your 24-year-old self?
When I talked to my dad about this, he was talking about overcommitting and how he wishes he would have slowed down when he was at a younger age. And now that he's in retirement, he's actually moving to Spain and he's like living this beautiful life that is so much slower and is so, incredible. And he's getting to like explore hobbies and just find so many things that I don't think he ever thought that he would see, And I feel like I'm starting to see some of that as I'm slowing down and resting and, like having weekends where I can hike and go for walks. And I wasn't doing any of that many years ago. And I'm glad that I worked hard and was able to get here. And also, like, there is no timeline. There's no prescribed timeline to get anywhere, and you can take however long you want, and you don't have to like work yourself half to death to try to achieve something on some self-imposed timeline. So I don't know, just slow down and enjoy it.
I love that. I think we'll end with that. I think that's such wise advice. I think time, you think about it so much differently as you get older. And so I love that sentiment. Well, we will provide links and show notes, Jackie, but if people are wanting to kind of get closer to your advice and perspective on life, where's the best way for them to hang out with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably where I spend the most time. JackieHermes.com. And there's links to find me all over the place in both of those places.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me, Jackie. It was awesome to get to hear your story a little bit more up close. And thanks for sharing your experiences with my audience.
Yes, I loved this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Scared Confident. Until next time, keep telling fear, you will not decide what happens in my life. I will.